So tell me how that relates to you.
Well, I have no idea what to do with that.
Yeah.
But
No, because I know you're being asked, Japanese people stereotypically are more reserved, they're shyer, and Italian people are,
socially, yeah.
and their social cues are so different. So how does it feel to be a third culture kid, as Chris was telling me?
Yeah. I think, like, in that where you're talking about, it was just, there is a slight confusion of, like, identity in terms of, like, my mannerisms, my, the way I am socially.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most it wasn't the most interesting thing, but there was an interesting thing from the book that talks about TCKs.
Oh, you read it?
No. I actually haven't read the whole thing. But
Okay, you read about it or some parts of it.
Yeah.
I haven't, so...
Okay, yeah.
I'd be
I wish I
interested.
could. Yeah, I'm super interested too. I still need to borrow that book from Chris. But there was this part where it was talking about this anxiety that third culture kids have about greeting people. And it just kicked in. Like, I didn't even realize, like, that made so much sense, because in Japan it's,
Oh, yeah.
it's usually like a polite bow.
Interesting
subtle
how
one.
different these things are.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, in Italy, it's 2 kisses. My grandmother would, like, grab my face.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just, like, go for it.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
With, like, the nice lip sound, like...
Yeah, exactly. Not shy at all. But...
Yeah, you have to be careful not to confuse the two.
Yeah, but then, what... But what I started realizing is that I started seeing some of my Italian friends, and when they meet people from, I don't know, the States or something, they have the way they greet people.
Yes.
Like, that's their way to do it. And I realized I don't have that. And that always makes me feel really awkward when I see people.
Yeah.
Sometimes I give a hug. Sometimes
you have to know, it's like an equation that goes in your brain. And usually when you meet people, you're a bit stressed, it's like a new experience.
Yeah.
So you have to make the choice and the pressure. It's funny, because I thought you were going to talk about homelessness in a way. The fact that you don't really have a place that you would call home. But actually, this is a symptom of it in many ways.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that when you're in Italy, you're the Japanese guy. And when you're in Japan, you're the Italian guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and this is really exemplified by the way you greet people. But for me, I mean, maybe it sounds a bit cheesy. We were just talking about it. But for me, you're just a Berliner. And in Berlin, we have kind of this hugging thing that to me looks like a mix-up. It's like a pigeon of hugging. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it causes me problems too when I go home, because we are supposed to kiss each other. I mean, I don't know if you know that, but in France, there are different kissing patterns depending on where you are. So sometimes it's one cheek. Sometimes it's 2 cheeks in one specific order, but you go south and it's the other order. If you start kissing each other on the same, if you mix up the cheeks, it can lead to very uncomfortable situations.
Oh.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's 3 kisses.
Oh,
It's very complicated. So I go home, and I just went home like last 10 days ago, and it was a room full of people I didn't know. So I was a bit like, ooh, social anxiety starts kicking in, and I started to want to shake people's hands, which is so stupid.
Right.
And so there was, I mean, you don't do that in France. I mean, you do it maybe with guys, but that's the rule. And there was this girl looking at me with like strange eyes because I wanted to shake her hand. So she just stood up and I just started kissing everybody. But I mean, kissing everybody in a greeting manner.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you get that too a little bit. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's like a very stressful. I mean, it's weirdly.
Yeah. Well, I think for me especially, it's. I mean, I've been living as myself for years, so I'm used to it. But it is kind of, there's a sense of I don't know what the right word for it, like kind of a disappointment when I'm like in Japan or Italy, and that makes me stand out, you know. It makes me feel very other.
your what does the greeting?
Yeah, the greeting. I don't know. I've kind of learned to embrace it a bit more. Like I'm just kind of a mix of a bunch of stuff. But
Interesting.
But I guess that kind of, I guess I'm kind of going into the topic of like homelessness and like not feeling like I fully identify with either culture.
Yeah.
And it's made very apparent because even when I go to Japan, they just can kind of like sense that I'm not, like I, for listeners who don't know me, I have very predominantly Asian features, you know?
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you would think that in Japan, like they might assume that I'm Japanese, but almost immediately they go like, so where are you from?
Yeah, because they notice that you, man, it's really interesting that you would say that. Because I was reading about a study that they showed that you are more likely to identify and store the faces of members of your ethnicity because different ethnicities focus on different parts of the face that vary more. So for example, to me, who is a Caucasian guy, I see immediately that you have the epicanthic folds, you know, like on the corner of your eyes, the Asian eyes.
Right.
But maybe for Japanese people, they look at something else, maybe the shape of your mouth or something like that, and they're like, wow, that is really not Japanese. This guy must be a mix, or, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting.
And also an interesting thing that somebody said is also, they pointed out, a Japanese person pointed out, like, yeah, you don't really seem full Japanese. And I asked, like, what is it, like the way I talk or something? They're like, no, it's just kind of like a vibe. And like just generally how I am socially, I guess.
Do you think you could put your finger on this? It's really hard to describe, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's very subtle, like micro movements. Like the way you respond to something that somebody said.
Yeah. Maybe your eye patterns, what you're looking at, in what direction, at which speed.
Yeah. Or like subtle like head nods or something, you know?
Yeah.
Very.
It's
small,
crazy. Yeah. It's crazy how attuned we are to these things.
Yeah.
And how we can just pick up something like that. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, and we have no idea either. I think that's the most fascinating thing is a lot of times, I don't know about you, but I feel like you can, like I might be able to pick out something that makes me go, oh, there's something about this person that's interesting. But I need to play catch up with my mind.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not immediately apparent what is catching your attention.
It's crazy that you have the conclusion before the argument.
Yeah.
Kind of. And that's also the problem they seem to have with AI. Because I would have to double check that, but it seems to me that all the deep fakes that we see appearing on the internet, they are generated by neural networks, so which are effectively black boxes. We don't know how it works. We just feed them a ton of data. Like, for example, Joe Rogan had deep fakes made out of him because there is so many hours of him on the internet and of his face that we can sample. And so with trial and error, the AI figures out how to emulate the face of that person and the movements and how words would sound like. But we don't know, like, there is no code for it. Like, it's completely unreadable for us humans. We cannot retrue engineer the process.
That's interesting, yeah. So it's like the computers know something that we don't.